The hearings are political football at this point. It was Congress that reauthorized the liberalization of the recertification process and the self-certification process by Boeing in '05, in '11, and '17. It was the DOT Inspector General that in 2012 conducted an internal audit of the FAA and found, based on FAA engineer complaints, that the FAA was not properly overseeing Boeing's self-certification.
Although the FAA did review the software update after the Lion Air crash, so isn't the onus on the FAA?
The onus is on Boeing, the onus is on FAA, and the onus is on Congress. We have 3 liberalization programs. Now, self-certification has been a very successful program throughout the decades. But the over-liberalization of that program to speed up the competitive advantage that Boeing has against Airbus has created some questions when compared to the increasing complexity of aircraft. Aircraft in the past decades were strictly mechanical machines: engines, cabling systems, gyros. Today, they're filled with millions of lines of software, far more complex machines that require software engineering and a lot of oversight.
And so complex that none of the 4,000 plus employees at the FAA could wrap their heads around it?
Well, that's not the case. The DOT audit in 2012 found that FAA engineers objected to some of the data being provided by Boeing, but nothing was done after that.
What should have been done after that?
Well, I think the engineers at the FAA should have been given some credence and some authority to countermand their superiors' suppression of their objections.
Mike.
Let's just say, obviously, we don't have a conclusive determination, a finding of exactly what caused these two.
That's exactly
right?
the point.
Let's just say, hypothetically, it was pilot error in both cases. In other words, Boeing may not be culpable. Do you think this process of re-examining the safety reauthorization process and everything is going to result in some kind of a change no matter what, because now we are scrutinizing it?
Well, I think there's the risk of overanalyzing it and then having a knee-jerk reaction and going in the opposite direction. Yes, we have to remain competitive, but that's not at odds with safety. You can over-liberalize it. You can liberalize it to an appropriate degree to maintain the competitive advantage while maintaining safety.
So where does it go from here, though? So if it's the FAA, if it's Boeing, and it's Congress, where do we go from there, and how does it not crimp Boeing's profits going forward if things have to slow down to a point where it's critical mass for Boeing?
Well, allow the FAA engineers, when there's a disagreement with their superiors within that organization, to have a mechanism to object and override, in some cases, their superiors' objection with empirical data.
Do you think that would work, though? Because there are only half a dozen political appointees at the FAA, and oftentimes they call the shots, and to have the bureaucracy overriding them, I mean, that's what the president would criticize as being the deep state.
Well, yes, but there's a new appointee to the FAA to be the administrator. It has to be approved by Congress. He is the former executive from Delta who has an impeccable record of safety. He's a U.S. Air Force Academy graduate. He's a bona fide and certified captain of the 737, 757, 767, has 30 years flying experience, and was head of the safety programs for 11,000 Delta pilots. I think it's the right person for the job at a critical moment in the FAA's history.
We're going to be learning a lot more about him in the coming weeks. I'm curious if you think this debate will affect any of the orders in Boeing's backlog.
I think it already has. Part of the European Union, many of the countries are considering legal action for business interruption against Boeing. Indonesian Airlines is considering canceling 49 orders. Clearly, confidence has been shaken.
Do the U.S. airlines have any legal recourse? American canceled 2,700 flights. Is Boeing going to get sued from all of these carriers?
Well, they may well be sued, but Boeing issued and there is some evidence of this, but it has not been verified, that Boeing issued a statement to all potential purchasers of the MAX. And that was, if we have any interruption of service, if you have any problems with the aircraft, we will reimburse you $1 million per aircraft should they have to be grounded. Now, Boeing is not answering questions now with regard to those statements, and they haven't yet been verified.
Well, those are questions that we'll need answered. Anthony Roman, we appreciate your time this morning.